The World Cup's second round, featuring a revealing sprint format, has ended after the weekend. Where is each car in relation to the start of the season, and what can we expect in the following races? But this time we had a Grand Prix marked by high degradation, taking care of the tires. But that, in general terms, felt much flatter compared to what we saw a week ago at the Melbourne circuit. In the end, we leave China with much clearer feelings of where each team is in relation to their different rhythms. But with a race that was quite flat in many aspects. But where even so, it's our time to summarize the best that this new round of the Formula One World Championship has left us. The number 2, the Chinese Grand Prix. As mentioned, we had the first sprint of the year this weekend. And as a mini summary of it, Hamilton took pole position with Verstappen second and Piastri third. In the first lap, Norris's mistake dropped him from 6th to 9th place. From there, the most relevant event was Norris only recovering one position with the safety car, which Piastri eventually passed to regain second place behind Verstappen, who was struggling with tires. To Dujan, ruining Gabriel Bortoletto's race by crashing into him, and Lawson still being slower than my grandmother in her wheelchair. With superb management, Hamilton won the sprint, followed by Oscar Piastri in second and Max Verstappen in third, securing the top 3 positions in this mini competition. Now after this we would have the main race. And despite a poor start from McLaren over the weekend, they remembered that they are the favorite team of 2025. And on this occasion, Oscar Piastri took the pole position with a superb lap that guaranteed him his first pole of his career. However, Russell sneaked into second position, surprising Lando Norris, who all weekend seemed to have trouble taming his MCL 3.9. And he was relegated to the third position to start this Grand Prix. So on Sunday we would be left wondering if Oscar Piastri could defend his first place or if we would have some surprises in terms of performance. In a surprising turn of events, Lawson, who wasn't expected to perform well, qualified last. He would start from the pit lane due to the team's decision to change his setup. Let's see if that made him feel more comfortable with the car. That was the only surprise we had that day. And with everything ready, the cars lined up on the starting grid, and once there, the traffic lights would go out. And with that, the Chinese Grand Prix would begin. Russell starts better than Piastri at this beginning, but the Australian boxed him in at turn number 1 to give him a smaller turning angle on the next turn, and with that he entered slower, which ended up affecting him. And this allowed Norris to come in from the outside and take the second position in the race. But also at that very start we saw Leclerc almost commit a crime against all of Italy. When trying to sneak into the second turn, he hits Lewis Hamilton. Miraculously, he avoided a double retirement but damaged his front wing, which didn't significantly impact the car's performance. Verstappen had a bad start, dropping a couple of positions, but overall it was a start without many complications. By lap 4 of this Grand Prix, Alonso retired due to a brake issue. His second did not finish this season. And from this point on, as with the new asphalt, the teams were finding a lot of degradation, especially with the first stint of driving with the medium tire. The race quickly stabilized, and this entire first stint had nothing relevant in itself. As I told you, the teams were doing a lot of management at this start. It wasn't until lap 11 that we saw the first stops from drivers like Dujan, Tsunoda and Antonelli. And the leaders would start to stop from lap 14. Hamilton pitted that lap. On 15, Piastri and Russell went in looking for the undercut against Norris, and when he stops on lap 16, he comes out behind George Russell, effectively executing the undercut maneuver by the Mercedes team. However, their satisfaction was short-lived, as it only took Norris 2 laps, regaining position with a superb maneuver on turn number 1, capturing the inside and thereby reclaiming second place, sending Russell back to third again. Although these were virtual positions, because on track they were third and fourth, because Albon was still on track without making his pit stop. Unlike the sprint race, Hamilton lacked the same pace this time. Leclerc pressed on with much more speed for several laps. So in the end, Ferrari had to ask that interchange positions because Leclerc was having more speed on track. And he saw this as an opportunity to try to catch Joe Russell and take away his podium position. Leclerc managed to close the gap in the final laps, but he was unable to overtake and claim the position. And Hamilton even ended up pulling away from his teammate. Among the few drivers who extended their stint at this start were Alex Albon and Oliver Burman, who stopped much later than the rest of their rivals in search of going for a single pit stop. Albon, with the medium, didn't stop until lap 20, thereby securing a second stint on hard tires, much more comfortable than his rivals. Oliver Burman, however, had the hard tire and could stay out longer on the track. At this point, most teams realized that despite the high degradation, a pit stop was a viable idea. And many started to do a lot of tire management work to be able to complete the race with that single pit stop, making the race completely linear at this point, much more linear than it already was. The highlight was Esteban Ocon Antonelli's impressive overtaking maneuver for 9th place, and Burman pressing Stroll, who managed to hold on until lap 37 to switch from hard to medium tires. And from there, the morbid dance that the British would give to half of the grid began, at least the second half of the grid. But precisely in that lap window, the second pit stop window of this race would also be activated. Although unknowingly, many teams would ruin their drivers and their races completely with that second stop. For example, the Racing Bulls, where both cars opted to make their second stop. Lawson, who made early stops, although really on track he wasn't doing anything. Lance Stroll also made a second stop, and so did Lewis Hamilton. But soon they realized that the only stop, that is just one pit stop, was the ideal strategy for this race. Because, with the exception of Hamilton, all the drivers who opted for the second stop and who were in points positions ended up losing them, with no chances of fighting back to get in. Everyone except for Oliver Burman, who to the rhythm of Bella Ciao was mopping up the rest of the drivers. He gobbled up Liam Lawson, did it with Carlos Sainz and Gasly, and managed to advance so much on the grid that he was able to place 10th with an incredible arsenal full for overtaking. What was completely a masterclass from Haas, both in rhythm and strategy, because in fact at that point Ocon was 7th. Also making the single stop work and showing very good pace, where Antonelli could not get close to threaten that position. But precisely with this second pit stop window, where most teams did not go to the pits, it left us with a top 10, almost immovable at this point. In their quest to reach the end of this competition with a single stop, they were doing more work to take care of the tires than to push for a better position. The drivers who made 2 stops ended up getting bogged down with the drivers from the midfield group. In fact, Tsunoda, who was having a great race before the second stop, had his Grand Prix ruined when his front wing was destroyed, without having any type of contact. Could it have been some kind of construction failure? In this same little group from the back was Jack Doohan, who today has been begging to be run as a mountaineer because they got him. 10 seconds for pushing Isaac Hayar off the track. In the Frenchman's multiple attempts to overtake him, Doohan repeatedly moved under braking, and they'll probably penalize him again for this. So it ends a weekend without rhythm, with a disastrous ending and with much more pressure on his head. Who did find rhythm towards the end of the race was Max Verstappen, who progressively started to cut time off Charles Leclerc, to the point of catching him on lap 53. Being within drag reduction system range, he tries to overtake him. At turn number 1, the Monegasque defends the inside, but for turn 2, he makes a move on the inside of the turn. And then, on the outside at turn 3, he ends up snatching the 4th position in a completely exquisite maneuver by the Dutch driver. This was the final excitement of the Grand Prix. One of the most relevant things about the end of the race is that Norris had a problem with the brakes, which became much more serious in the last laps, especially in the last one, having to brake a lot with the engine and using the pedal as little as possible, losing all the advantage he had built with George Russell, who almost caught him on the last lap. Despite the brake failure, he defended his 2nd place in the end, and with that at least finished this Grand Prix. But precisely on lap 56, Oscar Piastri ended the recital, recovered from his mistake in Australia, and won the China Grand Prix. To get back into the fight for the World Drivers' title. First win of the season for Oscar Piastri, who completes a very solid weekend where he again gets back into the fight, showing rhythm, solvency, and speed. Which was exactly what he needed to clean up his face from what happened last week and to show again that this guy can be there in the fight. The rest of the top 10 in the Chinese Grand Prix would end up as follows. Norris takes 2nd, overcoming late race brake issues. Russell secures 3rd after another solid performance. Verstappen finishes 4th, unable to achieve more in this Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc takes 5th place, followed by Lewis Hamilton in 6th. In another disastrous Sunday for the Italian team, Esteban Ocon claimed 7th place to a standing ovation, while Andrea Kimi Antonelli finished 8th after a challenging weekend. 9th place for Albon, closing a great race on his part, and closing the top the entertainer of the competition, Oliver Burman. But after the race we found out that Both Ferraris were disqualified, Leclerc's for not reaching the minimum weight and Hamilton's for excessive wear on the floor plate of the single-seater. Pierre Gasly was also disqualified for the issue of minimum weight. So all the drivers who were behind Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc move up 2 positions. With this, the Ancestral finishes 9th and Carlos Sainz scores the last point of the Chinese Grand Prix. This race has been disappointing compared to Australia. The track was tough, but everything the teams gathered on Saturday with the sprint made Sunday's race super predictable. Without many battles at the top and with a completely processional race. To which, unfortunately, due to how flat and boring it was, I can't give a better rating than 3. I believe things would be different if not for the sprint, but the truth remains unchanged. We leave China feeling down and have to wait for Japan in a couple of weeks to resume the adventure of this Formula 1 World Championship. My drivers of the day this time are Esteban Ocon, Alex Albon, and especially Oscar Piastri. The Australian has maintained complete dominance throughout the race, being able to better solve the car's problems, degradation, and with a completely brutal pace. Hopefully the following Grand Prix will replicate it and it won't fall as we have seen in the past season. Why? Is the fight for the title already underway? And Oscar knows that this could be his great damage. And he can't waste the important bullet this guy has in the chamber with his McLaren. The Ferrari team as a whole is undoubtedly the disappointment of the day. Because what just happened is a complete ridicule in every sense of the word. Never in history have the 2 Ferraris been disqualified in the same Grand Prix and they leave with only what was added in the sprint race. So what's happening with Ferrari right now is a disaster of biblical proportions, and we'll have to see how they recover from this. Because in addition, the race pace shown today has not been outstanding at all, confirming the problems that Ferrari has in this 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the summary of the second round of the Formula 1 World Championship. What's your opinion on this Grand Prix? Did you enjoy it or were you let down? How would you rate the race? And who have been your drivers of the day and your disappointments of the day? Let me know all your opinions in the comments section. I'll sign off by saying that if you like this video, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications so you know when I'm uploading a new video, and share this with your friends. I also invite you to follow us on our Instagram and Twitter accounts, linked in the video description. And see you soon for more content on this, your Skyline Racing channel. Thank you for tuning in and see you later.